Look, tell him you love him. Bite the bullet.
George. What will he do?
He'll choose Kim. You'll stand beside her at the wedding. Kiss him goodbye. And go home. That's what you came here to do. So do it.
And we are back, but before we go into part 2 of our My Best Friend's Wedding episode, it's time for PP, our patron pitch. This is where we let our patrons know what they can expect in their exclusive patron feed, and we also let non-patrons know what they're missing out on. And Alex, this episode should be the first episode released since the live stream for The Cure came to an end. So by now, listeners would know, assuming that they were paying attention to the live stream, they know how well we did on our segment, or how badly we did on our segment. Hopefully not. But we're recording this way in advance. So if you're wondering why we are not elaborating, commenting on our performance, and hopefully how much fun we had during the live stream for The Cure, well, that's because as of this recording, it hasn't happened yet. It's 3 weeks away, almost 4 weeks away. So hopefully you all attended. You all had fun, and we put on a good show. I have faith in us, Alex. I have faith in future us. But as of today's business, we're starting June with My Best Friend's Wedding. We have new QVRs, new after hours. But first, we're going to just go to the very basics. What does every patron get? Starting with the Travoltis all the way up to the Gads. Every tier gets access to our cutting room floor segments. So anything that doesn't make it into the episode, as long as it's interesting, it goes to the patron feed and you have access to it. You also get access to our bonus episodes. This month, patron Jamie Russell has picked for us, and we're going to watch the Paul Schrader written and directed First Reformed. This is the movie that famously disappointed a lot of people because it didn't get Ethan Hawke an Oscar nomination. I think that people were campaigning hard for that to happen, and it didn't happen. Nevertheless, it's still there. It still exists with Ethan Hawke playing a priest, I think. Have you heard of First Reformed, Alex?
I do believe one of my Twitter friends, Eduardo, is a big fan of this. So I think that's where, if I'm thinking of the same movie, that's where I know it from.
Well, it should be very different from The Canyons, which is the most recent time that we talked about.
Most things are.
Yes, that's true. No Lindsay Lohan in First Reformed, but there is another member of the Mean Girls cast that makes an appearance in that movie. So I will tease you with that, and I'll tease all patrons that. Watch First Reformed and listen to our episode on it, dropping on the Patreon feed sometime this month. Now, if you want more content, of course, we have more content. You just move up a tier to the We Know It's a $3 tier, and then you have access to our pre-recording notes. You have access to our quick video reviews. This month, Alex, you have been tasked by patron Rupert to watch The Banshees of Inisherin. I love how patrons have kind of started throwing modern movies at you because they want to fill up those blind spots that you've acquired throughout the recent years. And so this is a movie that was kind of like a big deal during award season a few years ago. So I know that you're aware of it. Colin Farrell.
Yeah, and I've gotten it mixed up a couple times. It's not a sequel to In Bruges, but it exists in the same universe?
I mean, no. But it exists with the same actors. And I think it's the same writer-director. If it's not, it was his brother. Because there's two guys with the same last name, and they both make movies, and they're not the Coens. So Alex is going to be making a video about his experience watching The Banshees of Inisherin, and Nerd Revert has assigned me the movie Athena, which I think I heard about it. It's, if I'm not mistaken, it's an animated movie. It might be even a Netflix original. I don't know. And you know me, I like to go in as blind as possible. So I'm not going to know anything else until I sit down in front of my TV and watch Athena. But you've seen a QVR before. You know how it works. We record a segment before we watch the movie, a segment when we're halfway through the movie, and a segment at the end telling you how we feel. So it's fun stuff. And then, of course, this tier also gives you access to Contrarians After Hours. That's the spin-off show where we tell you about other things that we're watching, that we're listening to, that we're playing, that we're thinking about. And this will be a special one because, as I said, we're recording way ahead of time. It's kind of old news by the time that you get it. But Roger Corman just passed away. So Alex had a proposal for the After Hours.
Yes, Roger Corman. We'll get more into it. We've talked about him in passing in some of the other films we've done, specifically over on our Patreon page. We recently talked about Journey to the Planet of Prehistoric Women. Is that the name of it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, just for the entirety of this podcast, you can, if there was like a Control F, you could find me just randomly mentioning and applauding Roger Corman throughout the years. But man, a guy that I'm not going to be able to sit here and tell you how much that guy changed filmmaking forever and for the better. So my proposal was that we should do something, and so we're going to be doing a double feature. We're going to start with The Little Shop of Horrors, the 1960 version that he directed, starring amongst other people in an acting role, Jack Nicholson, who was a very big trumpeter of Roger Corman, and then not directed by Roger Corman, but a film that was produced by New World Pictures. And, Roger Corman had his hands all in this pie, and it was a film by the name of Rock and Roll High School, which I am a big fan of. If you know me, if you've listened to the podcast for any duration of time, you know the Ramones are so very, very important to me. And Rock and Roll High School is the movie about the Ramones. It's a movie about a high school that tries to ban the Ramones music, so the Ramones come and blow up the high school. Like that's there's no part of that statement that I am not 100% in on. And that was a movie that Roger Corman, of course, one of the many movies that he assisted in financing and releasing. So Little Shop of Horrors, the 1960 version, and Rock and Roll High School. Little Shop of Horrors at the time of this recording is on Tubi, and Rock and Roll High School has been on Peacock forever. And it's a legit high definition transfer that they have on there. I have the DVD of it from 20 years ago or whatever. That has a phenomenal commentary track on it. That's just very fascinating about the making of the movie and how shoestring budget was. And, my thing I said on Twitter about Roger Corman is fucking punk rock, man. That dude was. And so we talk about that. I have a feeling Rock and Roll High School is not a movie for Julio, but I would wager money that by the time it's over, he will have enjoyed the discussion about it.
And then if you want to be part of those patrons that tell us what to do, people like Nerd Revert and like Jamie, then you go up to the $5 tier, the Embreeze, and the $10 tier, the Gads, and you get to puppeteer us a little bit and make demands as far as what the show, the main feed and the Patreon feed is going to be like. So go to patreon.com/Contrarian Prime, look at what we're offering, and see how you would like to join the Contrarian supplements.
$1, $3, $5, and $10 are respective tiers. Julio outlined them so eloquently. And we give thanks to all of our current patrons. We love y'all dearly. And as we've mentioned, we currently have projects that will be rolled out as patron exclusives once we cross certain thresholds of subscribers. So once we hit our next number, which is 30 patrons, we'll be rolling out a pretty interesting series, which I've titled From Silk Sheets to the Silver Screen, in which we'll be discussing the numerous attempts at prolific pornographic actors in transitioning into mainstream film. So if this is your first time listening, or if you're a long time listener that's on the fence about throwing a buck our way, now's the time to do so. Patreon.com/Contrarian Prime. But once more, thank you and bless you to all of our current patrons.
Now, Alex, Dermot Mulroney and Cameron Diaz have left the building. Julia Roberts is dancing with
I think I love you.
Julia Roberts is dancing with Rupert Everett, and we're just surveying the scene.
Maybe there won't be marriage. Maybe there won't be sex. But by God, there'll be dancing.
How white people shit is that scene where they sing that song at whatever fucking Chili's they're at? Not I think I love you. I'm sorry, I fucked that whole thing up. But anyway, it's I say a little prayer because that's the whole thing.
Yes, but the way that you sang it, I thought that you were imitating Dermot Mulroney when he was singing on the boat.
The way you look tonight. Yeah, that's how white people shit are both of those things. That's the whole point. This movie is white people shit through and through, my friend.
as expected.
Oh, definitely.
There was no false advertising.
I don't know if there's a Julia Roberts movie that exists that I don't just go white people shit, you know? God, she's gorgeous.
The hair, the 90s hair.
It's unreal. She's you understand, like, watching this, why she was what she was. And this movie, I have a vast array of feelings on. But man, you just get one glimpse at her in this, and you're like, yep, that makes sense that she was a fucking supernova of stardom at one point. And, you know, there's very few people that have ever looked like Julia Roberts. I talk about this specifically in the Aaron Brockovich episode. That's just, but this one more so. I mean, she's gorgeous in Aaron Brockovich too, but that movie's supposed to have a bit more of an edge and be kind of rugged and whatnot. And this is like just full on beautiful Julia Roberts, and it's like, yep, that's a fucking movie star right there.
Yep, that's how you make this type of movie work, and that's why, as mentioned, it was on our Patreon when I was talking about that Anyone But You movie. And I'm like, yeah, that movie's trying to be a movie like this. It's trying to be a romantic comedy, but if you don't have a Julia Roberts or somebody of the caliber of Julia Roberts playing the lead, then it's a lot harder to really sell the kind of stuff that happens in a movie like this. You
brought up Keeping the Faith, and that's one of the things about that movie is Jenna Elfman is not Julia Roberts. So, like, as much as I like that movie, it's one of those that you watch and you're like, interesting, could have been better. I like Jenna Elfman. Jenna Elfman has one of the all-time great cameos in Can't Hardly Wait. Yep. Like, she's incredible in that. But, man, I do not, retroactively speaking, envy the women of the 90s that tried to have, like, the romantic comedy or the leading role of the will they, won't they, or the potential girlfriend. Because, God, I imagine everyone was just like, where's Julia Roberts? Who's the next Julia Roberts? What do we... When Julia Roberts isn't on screen, the other characters should be asking, where's Julia Roberts? What could Julia Roberts be doing? So I want to get into it, but 74% on Rotten Tomatoes. Certified fresh. 61 reviews, so I still can't figure that out. I don't know what the fucking criteria is. Maybe they just buy it. Because every time I think I have a handle on it, and we joke about this every time we talk about it, it's probably easy to look up and figure out. But that's not what we do here, man.
No, we're not going to give them the satisfaction of actually Googling this.
We rage against the Rotten Tomatoes machine. Thanks to a charming performance from Julia Roberts and a subversive spin on the genre, My Best Friend's Wedding is a refreshingly entertaining romantic comedy. But Julio, out of those 61 reviews, 26% of them were not as on board as I believe you or I, just to go ahead and kind of guess there. What were the rotten quotes that you pulled for us?
All right, here we go. A few green splotches from the Rotten Tomatoes website. We're going to start with Heather Berner from Common Sense Media, who says, a poor imitation of a screwball comedy. We have screwball in the brain, Alex, because we just did What's Up Doc for patrons and to a certain extent Nickelodeon previous episode. And
yeah,
there were comparisons to screwball comedies there. And I mean, I don't know. Were you watching this and thinking, yes, this is screwball because of the pratfalls? Because Julia Roberts folds like 5 times during this movie.
Yeah, I didn't find this to be much of a screwball. No,
maybe it's a poor imitation because it's not trying to be one, Heather. Next, Lisa L. Spector from Chicago Reader says, the draggy narrative of this 1997 comedy is tough to sit through. There are even several overproduced musical numbers, but it does have an intriguing subversive element that I don't want to give away.
Hey, subversive. There you go.
What is the intriguing subversive element? Rupert Everett? Or is it that she doesn't get the guy at the end?
I think that's probably, I would guess that's it. But she's just mad because this movie made more people move to Chicago. She's, at that point in 1997, she was still, Chicago's my secret. I don't want anyone else to find out about it.
Time Out. No person listed here, says the film's brazen amorality gradually freezes the smile on your face. I guess because Julia Roberts is a horrible person, but I never felt that the movie thought differently. I think the movie is saying, yes, she's awful. Isn't it funny because this is going to blow up in her face at some point?
The movie's basically like the lessons right in front of her and you watch her like understand it in real time. And that's one of the most fascinating things about this movie is that it doesn't just end like a movie. It's, our main character fucking was young and naive or had deluded her own mind in some ways about, love or what was in front of her. And she kind of pays the consequence for it. And that's fascinating because that's not how many movies are made, especially in 1997.
Yes, there's that subversion. And finally, Robin Clifford from Reeling Review says, for those of us not so enthralled with Miss Roberts, you'll have to endure the movie, but we'll be mildly entertained with good old music and some stellar comedy provided almost entirely by Rupert Everett. Nobody else is funny, only Rupert Everett in this movie, according to this person. That is rough, though. I can imagine if for some reason you have something against Julia Roberts, I don't know why you would even go see this movie to begin with.
There has to be someone out there who Julia Roberts is their Eddie Redmayne.
Somebody that has hated her since she won for Erin Brockovich.
Yes.
That fraud. I would say, though, that person wouldn't be caught dead watching My Best Friend's Wedding. So what's the point? Unless they're critics, they work as critics and then they're forced to watch every movie out there. But even so, I think it's kind of a silly thing. But I appreciate the praise for Rupert Everett, which I've been teasing ever since our Dunstan Checks In episode, saying that, hey, there's more to this guy. I know that there's more to this guy than just playing the silly villain in a kid's movie with fake teeth and just all the silly stuff that happens at that hotel. And I knew that he could do something that's both broad but also a lot more subtle. That's because I'd seen this movie, and that was always my main takeaway. I think when I first watched it, I said in Good Corner, like I watched it with my parents, and they definitely enjoyed it more than I did. And I was aware enough that I saw that the world was enjoying it more than I did, and I couldn't quite figure out why. But even back then, I was like, but Rupert Everett, he definitely, he's going for it, and he's made himself memorable. Talk to me, Alex. Let's start there. Thoughts on Rupert Everett, the breakout star who had 10 minutes of fame. And then, I don't know what was the last time I saw him in a movie, but it's not like this went on for too long.
It looks like the last big thing he did, or the last thing he did, excuse me. He was in Ridley Scott's Napoleon, which makes sense that you and I don't remember the last time we saw him in something because neither of us were interested in that movie. So,
Hey! I'm Jules' fiance, George. Just in time for a quick pre-conjugal visit, if you catch my drift.
The Rupert Everett character in this is interesting to me. He's good. He's great. I don't think there's anything necessarily blow away about him in this, but it's I appreciate that he's gay and that a movie from 1997 doesn't just make that the joke.
Yeah.
Because that was such fodder for that. Obviously, we have come a long way in the 25 years since then in terms of representation and whatnot. So Rupert Everett, to me, is not something about this movie that I think the idea that his character is gay and more of the moral compass without it being like, oh, it's because he's gay. Like that's interesting to me. The comment you made about like, if you're not a Julia Roberts fan, why would you watch this? Because you know exactly what it is. That like really applies to my situation. In that I never watched this movie because it was, I think I joked about on our last episode when we were discussing doing this. I remember the poster for this where she's picking the bride off the wedding cake and it's just Julia Roberts, like, you know, like Kenta in all caps. And I always just figured it was Julia Roberts being charming, big open mouth laugh. She gets the guy in the end. Now I watched this movie and it is exactly what you'd think it would be in the sense of like Julia Roberts getting herself in these situations. There's moments where she gets to reflect and have like legitimate scenes of acting. But the way this movie plays out is not at all what I thought it was going to be. And quite frankly, a movie that's a quarter of a century old, I found myself kind of blown away by it. And it's not, you know, we're not talking about fucking A Night to Remember or some like, you know, criterion that like I've missed along the way. It is a Julia Roberts romantic comedy. And in a lot of ways, it was exactly what I thought it was going to be. But the story, her motives, the actions she takes in the movie, and what eventually comes of it, this was never spoiled for me. So the supporting characters kind of being trashed too in their own ways. This isn't like a 5-star A+ movie, anything like that. So I don't want to get it twisted that like this is like, oh my God, I'm like over the moon about it. It's just I had a completely wrong idea of what this movie was for the entire existence of this film. And I remember seeing TV spots for it as a kid on TV. So like the entire life cycle of this movie I've lived through, and watching it for the first time, you know, a few days ago, I was like, well, you know, they do the things where, you know, she wears a dress that tears and, she drinks a beer fast or eats a hot dog, and you know it's kind of charming. That's all there, but she's like a kind of a bad person that learns that along the way. I was not expecting that.
And it's not just her. I mean, the movie does that thing that I made fun of it in Historian's Corner, but she is. It makes sense because this is what happens, right? But she is exposed as a terrible person, and she actually gets forgiveness for both Cameron Diaz and Dermot Mulroney. Did you have trouble buying that?
Yeah. Well, this terrible person thing is I'm being a bit over the top and
dude, she is a terrible person.
Hyperbolic. Yeah, she's also in this movie 27, and I'm not going to pretend like I was. I'm 36 now. And I think I've made great strides at being a better person since I was 27, because, you know, you're always changing and whatnot. But yes, her actions in this are not good.
Okay, so yes, in the scale of like, she's not fucking Hitler, but
Jesus, that's not where the fucking goalposts are, dog.
Well, what I'm saying is that one of the things that I remember struggling with was the fact that she is forgiven. Like, even when I was writing my notes for Controller's Corner, I was like, you would be kicked out of this wedding, even if everything is, you know, fixed by the end.
That's the part where it's a Julia Roberts romantic comedy. That's the part where it's a movie. And I agree with you. Yeah, I'd be like, get the fuck out of here.
But it's kind of lovely still that they forgive, right? That's the trick of the movie, I think, because you're talking about how, like, yes, it's everything that you would expect when they pitch you this movie, and then there's that balancing act of she does a lot of bad things, but I think that it balances out because there's a lot of very lovely moments that they have between these characters, and that I don't think that I could appreciate that when I was younger, the first time I watched this movie, and that's why I had resistance to it. You know, in my mind, watching this as a teenager, I guess I was thinking she's a bad person, so she doesn't deserve any of the the sweet moments that she has. Like, those are bad, and the idea that this guy, the Dermot Mulroney character, can have strong feelings for her while being engaged and loving Cameron Diaz, that wasn't, black and white. And so I had trouble embracing that as a young person. But watching it play out, as an adult, you're like, yeah, I mean, life is complicated, and relationships, having, we have long relationships with someone, it can get murky. So I like that the movie goes there, and it allows the characters to be thoughtful about what they're doing, especially because it highlights how bad the thing that she's doing are. She's sabotaging something that's very real between these two people, but it's not like she's an all-out villain. Like, there's moments where you can see that her feelings are also very strong. It's a very messy situation, and the movie doesn't paint it as black and white. Like, when you're watching this movie, Alex, are you hoping that she gets the guy at the end? Are you hoping that somehow there's a reveal where Cameron Diaz turns out to be a bad person, and you're like, okay, well, it's okay now if they end up together? Because I know that watching it, the first time I watched it, like I said, I was much younger, so I was very confused because I felt like the movie wanted me to root for her, but I found her so morally wrong that I just couldn't get on board, and I think that's why I couldn't enjoy the movie.
That's the fascinating part about it, is that it is structured like, I keep going back to it, but yeah, it is structured like a 90s romantic comedy. But then you find yourself halfway through of like, wait, I'm not rooting for this main character. Like, this is different. And I'm not exactly rooting for Cameron Diaz either, because I don't know enough about her. What I'm doing is watching this movie. It's one of those songs that's really upbeat. Immediately what comes to mind is Pumped Up Kicks by Foster the People. Was that the name of that band?
Yeah.
Very poppy, very upbeat. And then you listen to the lyrics, it's like, man, this is fucked up. And obviously this movie's not that intense, but like, you watch it and it feels like a coloring book that you have with very standard pictures, and you just get red, green, blue, yellow, orange, and you reach for those crayons and you start to color, and the color that's going out is different. It's like, wait a minute, what's going on? Like, it's that's what's so interesting about this movie to me, is that it looks like, walks like, talks like your standard affair from the time, but then when you actually start like paying attention to what these characters are doing, and they're, especially our main characters' motives, it's just like, okay, this is different.
Kimmy says if you love someone, you say it. You say it right then, out loud. Otherwise, the moment just
passes you by.
That scene on the boat between her and Mulroney is so good.
Yeah.
And it's, like I said, to a younger person, to a younger Julio, it was very confusing because I found myself resisting the fact that my heart was going out to them. He is feeling he's having cold feet. He's, and he's talking to his best friend while also sensing that she has something to say. And then, the moment passes them by, but they have that, he's singing the song and they're dancing. On one hand, when you step out of the movie, you're thinking, this is incredibly inappropriate, dude. You're engaged. You really shouldn't be doing this. But in the context of the movie, that's the journey that this guy has to go through. And I like it. I think that a movie like When Harry Met Sally, right? It poses out there, like at the front, it poses that question. It was like, can men and women be friends? And of course, Billy Crystal from the beginning is telling you, no, they can't. It's just, you can't, because the moment that it gets too personal, too strong, then it becomes a romantic relationship. And then the movie doesn't really disprove it. The movie goes on to have him, have this sort of friendship with Meg Ryan, and then by the end they're together. And it feels like a very, I love that movie. That movie's really funny, and I think it's very smart. But the way it tackles that question is very simple. And then along comes a movie that I don't think that has like a whole lot of pretensions either, My Best Friend's Wedding. But the way that it handles the question is, I think, a lot more mature and a lot more interested in looking at the shades of gray, right? Like, they have a connection. So what are you supposed to do with those feelings? And when is it that you're crossing the line? And once you cross the line, can you walk it back? I mean, that's real shit. So that is very exciting. Yeah? So whereas like that scene on the boat initially kind of like bothered me. Now I really appreciate it, you know, and whereas like before when she kisses him and Mulroney doesn't push her back initially, you know, I was always thinking, oh man, you're a dog, you know, Cameron Diaz is better off without you. Now I watch the movie, I'm just like, well, of course this was going to happen. And it's more about like, how do they handle it after? I was very excited to see how well it worked.
Well, Julio, I think we both like this movie.
Yes.
So in lieu of going in discussion of just us talking about how great it is, let's talk about what you just brought up. Your personal experience in life and how, you know, this movie kind of relates to, you're obviously a married man now. Life's different for you than it is for me. But let's just say prior to your marriage, or just your overall thoughts on it, like the idea of, as a heterosexual man, having like a close friendship with a female. You think it can work?
Yes. I mean, I think so. I have close friends that are women.
Mm-hmm.
And I think also, I think the conundrum, so to speak, is not exclusive to heterosexual friendships. It's not just heterosexual men, heterosexual women. I think I think that it also happens.
I was just specifically asking you.
You were singling me out. Yes,
that's right.
Put me on the spotlight.
I was singling out the hetero Peruvian male market in that one.
I think that I come at it in two different ways. I think that the way I live my life, so this is obviously very personal, but I think it's necessary to bring it up just because it explains how I feel about the movie or movies in general on this question and this sort of thing, right? I think that for me, for a serious relationship to work, a serious monogamous relationship to work, you have to be mindful of what you do with other people, right? Like Dermot Mulroney having a slow dance with Julia Roberts on that boat, like it's incredibly inappropriate for the way that I live my life. If I ever did something like that, I would be crossing a line in my mind, you know, and if my wife had a problem with it, my wife, my girlfriend, my fiance had a problem with it, I would 100% understand.
Yes.
Because I would feel the same way. But I understand that that's not how everybody lives their lives. And I know that that's, you know, movies are a representation not just of my life, but everybody else's lives. So that's what I was saying in the context of the movie, in the context of those characters. I don't know. I couldn't tell you what would Cameron Diaz, what would Kimmy say if she saw them slow dancing, and I don't know how she would.
The thing is with like that, especially 27 is different, but like at 36 now, 37, you know,
right?
To me, I would see that like that slow dancing shit and be like, dude, that's so much more intimate than fucking. Like that would be. I would be like,
right, but she sees them kissing later in the movie, so I think that kind of makes the question moot. Like, you know, the fact that she ends up the movie, as far as the movie is concerned, Kimmy and Michael, they're both big enough to look past it and to look past all the bullshit. And I really like actually that Julia Roberts calls Kimmy out and tells her, you never trusted me. The only reason that you made me a maid of honor is so you could keep me close. And I was like, that's great. Because
all women hate each other. That's
not it. I think it's saying that she's smart. All women are smart. She's, you know,
you know, that's my go-to joke about any movie from the 90s is all women hate each other.
But anyway, going back to like the main question, right?
Yeah, I'm just trying to give, you know, our listeners like a personal insight here.
Yeah, but also I think that it's good because it's like, well, it explains why I had more trouble with it before and why I don't now, because as an adult, as I've grown older, like I can appreciate depictions on screen of something that may not be necessarily reflecting how I live my life, but it's still interesting to watch unfold. And that's where I am with this movie. You know, it's like, yeah, I would never behave the way that anybody in this movie behaves. And now I'm suddenly having a flashback to our Crash episode because I think I made sort of like a similar argument. It was like, I'm not like these people, but man, am I glued to the screen watching it happen. Very different movies, but it's the same thing, right? I like that exploration because it's such a complex set of emotions, you know, people that, because and I can recognize them because I have felt them, you know. It's like I think that as you grow up, I would think that it's almost impossible not to ever find yourself in a situation where you're in a friendship that eventually starts feeling like it's something else. And that's regardless of, like I said, sexual orientation. You know, I think at some point you can sense that, and then whether it remains as something platonic or it becomes one-sided, whatever the case, you can recognize that when you see it on screen. And then you just kind of like rub your hands and you're like, all right, well, what are you going to do with this? What are you, because this is such a powerful setup. And so I think that this movie capitalizes on that so well.
Again, if I was watching this at 27, I was the age Julia Roberts is supposed to be in this movie. I'm like, yeah, I mean, this all seems like, they're adults about this, so that this can be, they could pull this off, and no one's feelings gets hurt. And at 36, I watch this and I'm just like, rubbing my hands together with like the tantalization that this premise offers. I'm like, oh man, these fuckers are gonna crash into a brick wall of reality. It makes it interesting because you're probably more mature than I am, and it's not just because you're fucking 40 years older than I do have female friends, most of which are wives of my buddies or are friends that I've made that are married. It seems to just be, in my experience, that's kind of how it works, because exactly what you said. Regardless of sexual orientation, a lot of times if you just establish a friendship with somebody, but in my personal experience, when I'm just trying to be friends with a woman who's single or also single, and in the case, like to relate to this movie, I had several Jules in my life that were girlfriends, but not really girlfriends, that type of thing. Mm-hmm. And so understanding the dynamics at play, and in that same situation, like I've made real friends and connections with people that are like not just romantic, but like relationships. But the problem is, and the problem we see in this movie and the human nature of it, Jules and Michael had sex, been intimate with each other, and that just changes the dynamic of things so much. I think that's where the question comes into play. I think sex and intimacy, and that's one of the things that, like, when I was younger, when I was 27, when I was like Jules's age in this movie, I was deluded enough to like be like, oh yeah,
it's just sex.
That was my whole 20s of saying like, yeah, sex doesn't really change anything, you can just have sex and it's fine. And then like
sex,
it's still sex. Goddamn right. You're listening to this right now and you didn't think we were going to bring Dan Fogler into the fold in my best friend's wedding discussion?
I realize this comes at a very inopportune time, but I really have this gigantic favor to ask of you. Choose me. Marry me. Let me make you happy. That sounds like 3 favors, doesn't it?
I think that something that makes the difference, though, and where it also comes into play how you feel, like what your values are, so to speak, or whatever, is like, well, where does the movie end? What is the end point, and what does the movie end up saying about these things? And I think that that's what makes My Best Friend's Wedding a winner in my book, right? Because I think that if this movie had ended with her and Dermot Mulroney getting together, I would have felt like that was bullshit.
Oh, fuck that. Yeah.
Right? But part of it would be like from the moral point of view. Like I would think, oh, so you were telling me the entire time that it's okay that she's doing this. And I would have had a problem with that.
So my thing was, I was about to say, before you so rudely cut me off, Julio, was I know my approach there was just, I was running the ball, getting first downs repeatedly, but not scoring. What I was going to, sneak it into the end zone to say my sticking point was going to be, it made it so much more rewarding to see this movie for the first time, spoiler free, at the age of 36, bordering on 37, because I feel like this movie offers so much more than I expected it to. And I could see watching this in the 90s in the sea of very unrealistic or very movie type movies that we've been talking about this whole time, and again, I don't want to get lost. This is not like a perfect movie. There's still all the trappings of the comedy of that day in this, for good or bad. And I just was like watching this, and even like the scene at the end, there's like a chase scene on Michigan Avenue that ends at the fucking train station, where she admits everything. And it is a movie, but like the situation portrayed in this is a lot different from most of the movies of its day. So, dude, I'm not going to lie. I was kind of blown away by this movie because I had an idea in my head of what it was, and it was not that. And it was fairly open-minded for a rom-com made in 1997. You know what I mean?
Yes. It's even more powerful, like you said, when you're putting it in the context of, oh, this was, like you said, and it made me feel so old, a quarter of a century ago.
I do have a flair for the dramatic, so I was like, how can I make this movie sound oldest as possibly can?
Julia Roberts hated you the moment you said that.
Dude, she was legit. She was 30. She would have been 29 making this movie. So when she said 27, I know when she said 27, I was like, no. And then I looked it up, and it was. She wasn't Bing Crosby, 55, playing a 20-year-old. So
how old was Mulroney? 40?
Let's see. 63. So he would have been, what is that? 33 or so?
All right. I mean, it kind of tracks. But he's supposed to be the same age as she is.
Whoa.
So
this picture of him from 2013 on his Wikipedia page. It's a picture of Dermot Mulroney at the 2013 Toronto International Film Festival. His hair and sideburn combination is not right.
Oh,
this is.
So let's talk about him for a minute, because that was another thought, something that changed throughout the years as I've watched this movie. And I've gotten older, and also.
Really? I was about to say he could have been anybody. Like anybody could have
Right, but that's the thing, right? Like, because if you cast a bigger star, I don't know if the movie works.
Oh, yeah. They can't have Brad Pitt in there.
Right. But you can't have somebody that's completely schlubby, because then he disappears. So it's
you can't have Eddie Redmayne or Nicholas Hoult in there.
Yeah, that's true. I
swear it's not a thing against the British. I promise.
Plenty of unassuming, unimpressive American actors too.
Dude. This is like the problem too. This is a problem across the board of like people thinking everyone should be something. And Dermot Mulroney is just that was like Oppenheimer, that guy movie. And there hadn't been one of those in so fucking long that people are just like, yeah, people can just be kind of not faceless, but, the world needs ditch diggers, and for the, we need jobbers in the world. And Dermot Mulroney has an impressive filmography, as I like to say. I don't think that dude's eating pork and beans or anything. And also the humility of it, to be honest, like that's a very strong quality, to be understanding that you have a strong enough presence to stand across the screen with Julia Roberts, but you're not going to overshadow her. And that was exactly what his character was in The Family Stone also. Mm-hmm. Twice they were like, we need someone who can stand across from Sarah Jessica Parker and Claire Danes and not steal any of the attention away from the girl in the scene. And that is lost. Like there seems to be too much hung up on the idea of like stars and not a star, because I know his name was on the poster, but it's a fucking Julia Roberts there, man. You're exactly right. You need a capable actor, but they can't be Matt Damon. Like they can't be Idris Elba. I know I go to Idris all the time, but goddamn, like that dude is just, when he's on in a movie, like no one can fucking keep up with him. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I think I understand your point in the sense that this is a very thankless role for Dermot Mulroney, but the movie works because it's Dermot Mulroney in that role.
Yes, because I think that the first time I watched it, I was like, this dude is boring. Like he's the most boring aspect of the movie, and it's so weird that the movie wants me to believe that these two women are fighting over him. And now I buy it. And I mean, obviously, for one, it's like I've grown to appreciate the performance, and also I mean, I think he nails it when he has some of the moments that are more more important, some of the stronger ones, like the boat.
He's way more believable in like the real scenes in this than in Family Stone. In Family Stone, it's like, what the fuck are you doing, guy?
Yeah, here when he forgives her, like I buy it, and I think that's the thing. He's a good actor. He's not a superstar. He's not an A-lister, but he's a good actor. So I buy it. And so I was thinking, yeah, if you get a bigger name, then it gets a little too distracting. You need Michael can't be somebody that, like you said, that's stealing the attention. This is the Julia Roberts show, and he's kind of like this guy in the background.
Mark Ruffalo was an excellent example of that for a moment in time, but then he got too big.
Now
like
he's a Hulk.
Well, yeah, amongst other things, yeah. He's the good part of Poor Things.
Can't have Pacino or De Niro playing Michael.
Oh, fuck. The way you look tonight.
My grandmother always said, "This too shall pass."
All right. So coming towards the end here. Yes, it's 27 years later. So we're the age away that Jules was in this movie. And we do have the benefit of having things like Sideways and most recently The Holdovers, amongst many, many other things. So we know who we know who the fuck Paul Giamatti is and what he's capable of. He absolutely makes for, in my opinion, the most memorable scene in this movie. And I can't figure out if it's because I know it's Paul Giamatti and it's when he's early in his career, or because he's that good. It's likely with everything, in life, somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
But I remember watching this, and I love the way the scene ends too, where this shall pass, and he goes, and then Mulroney opens the door and she falls back. We completely forgot to mention in Contrarian's Corner that this is one of two movies where Dermot Mulroney's engagement ring ends up on the wrong girl's hand.
Yes, although the way that he recovers the ring in this one.
Yes. This is what the fuck?
Talk about crossing a line.
Yeah, super erotic.
That's why women fight over him.
Apparently, man, that shit got me going, so I get it 100%. Yeah, Paul Giamatti, our boy, very memorable, and that's because I'm watching this movie for the first time in 2024. But upon your rewatch, where you can see why he became what he became, right? Just in this little moment.
Yeah, no, he nails it. I think to add like a third factor to why it all works so well, it's just that it's a very good scene. And I think that he fills in the Rupert Everett void of like a friendly voice that is trying to be understanding while also trying to give her some perspective. I think those might be my favorite parts of the movie, or at least some of my favorite parts of the movie, is when you have these characters that acknowledge that she is doing something bad, and they kind of hand her like a way out, or something that would maybe she could take it and be a better person. And that's Rupert Everett through the entire movie. He's just telling her, "Look, this is wrong, and this is what you should do." And then of course she doesn't do it, And then Giamatti does something similar here, where he acknowledges that she's in a bad place, and you can tell that she's fucked up, and then he says something really nice to her. And that's, again, in a movie where she's been doing a lot of pratfalls, and there's been a lot of kind of like silly things, to have a moment that grounds you and really and feels real, not necessarily real as in like, oh, this would happen, but real as in like, oh, these are real emotions, right? Somebody that's showing compassion to a stranger, granted a hot stranger that looks like Julia Roberts, but still, that stuff is really good. So it's like you got a well-written scene, you got a really good actor to deliver it, and on top of that, now when you watch it today, you have the history of that actor on your mind. It's like, oh yeah, of course, a highlight of the movie.
Secondly, or I guess in closing, what I wanted to bring up, and I couldn't figure out how to work it into Contrarian's Corner. So during the scene where Kimmy tries to convince Michael to work for her dad at the insistence of Julia Roberts, Jules, it is easily the most insane thing that happens in this movie, in that every time it cuts to Dermot Mulroney, there is a split focus shot of him with Julia Roberts in the background.
Yep.
The I believe the technical term is I think it's split diopter is the technical term. Basically the De Palma shot, what he made famous throughout the 70s and 80s, used a lot liberally in things like Blowout and whatnot. And I was like, what the fuck? That is, I am curious now what the PJ, chat me up, brother. What was the artistic decision behind this? Because it's
well, but it works so well because you're supposed to be you need the two reactions. You need the reaction of Mulroney.
That's the whole point.
Yeah, and
movies are shit now. Like this is such like a nothing, and this is something that I guarantee there's someone listening to this right now like, who the fuck cares? I'm like, I do. I was watching this and I'm like, what the fuck? There's a split focus shot right now while they're reacting to this. What's going on? It's exactly you're right. Like you need the reactions of both of them. It's just I'm so used to laziness that it was that 1 10-second shot, like my mind fucking melted out of my ear. I was like, what?
Well, I think it's fair, and it provides a nice segue into like it's mattering of things that I want to close with, because I think we need to talk about PJ Hogan, and I do want to. And you said something about the say a little prayer sequence, and I sent you a picture of the DVD special features menu, and there is a sing along. That's one of the special features, like
that's
the sequence
awesome
with a sing along, and it was a big deal. I remember it being a big deal. It was like the thing that whenever there was clips of my best friend's wedding talking about the movie, they would show at least part of that scene, and of course that's part of the Rupert Everett Variety Hour. Going back to him as a way of getting back to PJ Hogan. Like I like him more than you do in this movie. I think that he's more than just good. I think that he's great. I think part of it is just that I like the character, and it's not just that the fact that he's gay, but that's not the joke, because of course that's great. And also I understand like the practicality of that. It's like, well, he has to be gay, otherwise he would be a love interest for Julia Roberts. So logistically, like the screenplay demanded that he would be either gay or, I guess, otherwise engaged. But the problem is, if you're doing that, then you're making a movie about sexual tension between people that shouldn't be having sexual tension. So, the easiest way, I guess, to get rid of that is just to make him gay. But then on top of that, like, I think the performance is just really good, because he gets to be really broad, like very silly in that scene where he comes in to be, to pretend to be her fiance. But then he gets to deliver some of like the best moments of the movie. Like I said, I was referencing with the Giamatti scene, right? Where he's just talking her down from just manicness and trying to get her to see the light.
Michael's chasing Kimmy.
Yes!
You're chasing Michael.
Yes!
Who's chasing you? Nobody. Get it?
That kind of stuff is what makes the movie special, and it's tied into his performance. I said that I don't know what happened with him, and yeah, obviously he's remained a working actor, but it was the kind of thing that I remember right after my best friend's wedding. Because everybody knew that Julia Roberts was awesome. Cameron Diaz was already kind of like starting to rise. Nobody was talking about Dermot Mulroney because his character is not the flashiest one, but everybody was talking about Rupert Everett. And it's like, what's he going to do next? And I think we've referenced before the Inspector Gadget movie, because he plays Dr. Claw.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, like the last gasp of his 15 minutes. He's in Stardust playing a background character, like a minor character, and so on. But he is one of the leads in another movie we're going to cover, another PJ Hogan joint. So, they were trying to make it happen.
They definitely were.
Yeah. It's so this is not the end of Rupert Everett as far as the contrarians are concerned. He'll come up again. Now, PJ Hogan, how do you feel about the fact that he made 2 wedding movies in a row?
Hey, man. Nolan Ryan made a whole career off a fastball. So, stick with what you're good at.
Yep. I think that if you told me, if I hadn't watched them, I'll be like, come on, that's kind of lazy. But having seen them, I think that they're more different than they're alike. I really wish I knew why Toni Collette is not in it. And it could be a myriad of reasons, right? But especially because Rachel Griffiths is in this in a small part. And it's like, you could have found a role for Toni Collette, and maybe she just didn't want to, or the studio didn't want to. I don't know. I mean, it's today, of course, anybody would want Toni Collette in the movie, but who knows? But I think that the similarities are not so much that, it's about weddings, but more about the fact that he really likes to play with musical sequences. It was all ABBA in Muriel's Wedding, and here he has Burt Bacharach for most of it, and he likes to craft scenes around musical outbursts, and that's why I also like the little prayer moment, because it's just like, it's not just a musical sequence in a movie, it was a musical sequence in a PJ Hogan movie. And so, established by this podcast, I'm always a lot more amused by white people shit, so I'm an easy mark for that kind of stuff. But even the opening, with the completely unrelated musical number, and Cameron Diaz doing the bad karaoke, I hate that trope, but I like it in this movie. I think I like it because everybody embraces, and she kind of commits to singing badly.
Yeah, that's one of your go-to eye rollers, but yeah, works out.
Yeah, it comes together really well. So, just to give scores, Alex, I agree with you that this is not a 5-star movie, but it gets really close for me. Every time I watched it, I liked it more and more. Yeah, because I really don't have a whole lot to complain about it. Yes, they're like the tropes, but the tropes are there for a reason. They work. I think that the tropes are not a problem when they work, and they have top tier people here making them work. So every time that Julia Roberts slips and falls, it doesn't bother me. Like, I may not be laughing at that specifically, but I think that she's really good at doing it anyway. So I'm gonna go with 4.5 stars. What's your score?
By God, a B. I logged on a Letterboxd, 3.5 stars. A very solid B with the not caveat. What I'm trying to say, the distinction, the celebrating factor that elements of this movie were way ahead of its time, and kind of beyond a lot of what was being made contemporaneously. So 3.5 stars, but a solid B. I enjoyed this movie, surprisingly so, to a very borderline shocking degree.
That's good. I felt like this could go either way, especially because based on our Aaron Brockovich episode, especially, like, it always, I had this idea that you can appreciate Julia Roberts' talents, but not necessarily be won over by them. And it sounds like in this movie, the magic worked. So
yes, the magic was back. All right, so Contrarian's seal of approval on this one. Julio, what comes next?
So as far as the PJ Hogan journey, like I said, next time we visit with him, it's going to be a rotten movie, and that is the Rupert Everett vehicle that I mentioned before. It's called Unconditional Love, and it's 14% on Rotten Tomatoes. Yeah, it had to happen. Everybody eventually has to stumble. So, but that's not going to be for a couple episodes. Before that, we go back to Bogdanovich, and we have another Bogdanov film, which, man, if you thought that the 14% for Unconditional Love was bad, Illegally Yours gets a 0% on the tomato meter. And that's where we're going next. Peter Bogdanovich, he hadn't hit rock bottom yet, and maybe he does with Illegally Yours. I'm not even sure who's in it. I know I probably glanced at it when I was putting it all together, but I just know it's 1988, not very well received, to put it mildly. So Illegally Yours is coming up next.
Well, we'll see what that brings. I'm not sure it's going to be quite as good as this, but that's going to do it for My Best Friend's Wedding. Julio, I think it's time that we go ahead and get out of here.
All right, let's get out of here.
Welcome to our end credits.
Or as we usually call them, our perennial plugs.
We start off by giving thanks to the Festive Years who provide our opening and closing tracks. They kick us off with Last Stand and take us home with Summer of 99. Be sure to head over to thefestiveyears.com for any and all Festive Years needs.
Our friend and fellow podcaster Hans Rothgieser is the man behind our logo and all the art you see related to our show. Reach out to him and let him know how much you like that little tomato. His email address is mildemonios@hotmail.com and his website is mildemonios.pe. That's MILDEMONIOS. You can also check out his podcast Nación Combi about Peruvian current affairs and Marginal about economy. Hans, thank you for all your support.
For those interested in the regularly absurd world of professional wrestling, Joe and the boys over at latenightgrin.com have you covered. Tell them the Contrarians sent you.
And we like to close with special thanks to our social media team of Zoe Perez and Coriari. Each of the social media accounts we mentioned in the introduction look as good as they do because of their work.
So that'll do it for this episode of The Contrarians, where we're right and you're wrong, and we will catch you next time.